He did unite all the different versions, all the different parts into one.
Again, we are
Scribe
going
did
in
do.
circles. We need to be specific.
Okay, wait.
Because it is very
What's your
simple.
question? What's the question? What's
You are saying Abu Bakr made the Quran as one volume, one book. I'm saying to you, no, this was done by
him?
Uthman.
It was his scribe.
It didn't happen in time of Abu Bakr. This is my point.
When did it happen?
It happened in time of Uthman.
Osman. So it wasn't one Quran.
It was
All the different
written.
scriptures will not unite it in one book.
Oh, now, what is Quran? Can you define the Quran?
It's a book.
No.
What is it?
What is a recite from the time of the
Is the
Prophet?
Quran not
Can
a
I
book
define
now?
for you? You want to speak with Muslims?
Is the
What
Quran
is
not
the
a book
Quran?
now?
My friend, you're talking about Mus'haf.
So you're saying it's
There is something called
Is the
Quran.
Quran a book or is the Quran not a book?
So
If
are
you
you-
write it down, it becomes a Mus'haf. If you memorize the Quran, now I'm saying I'm memorizing the Quran. It is a revealed, inspired word to Prophet Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, which has been transmitted by tawatur. That groups of memorizers have memorized it and they delivered it to the generation after them. This is the definition of the Quran. I'm not talking about a printed book or copy.
Does that deny the Quran being a
No,
book?
you can put it in a
I
copy.
don't think so.
You can put it
I think
in a
it's-
book.
I don't think
I
it
think
denies
it
it
is a
either.
book.
Okay, you can call
And
it.
you're not
refers
denying
to
what
it.
I'm
You can
saying.
call
I
it.
don't know why
Okay, you
you're.
can call it. You can.
I don't know why you're saying what you're saying. You're not actually denying.
Okay, it is a theological discussion. Yeah.
No, it's not. It's me saying the Quran is a book.
Fine.
Which
If
has-
I
it's-
memorize,
there's nothing wrong
if
with
I
it.
memorize the Quran, and I am illiterate, I cannot open the book and read it.
Yeah,
I
if
just
somebody
hear-
reads the book to you,
Let
if
me
some
finish.
or recites the
Let me
book to
finish.
you, you can
But
memorize
Prophet
it.
Muhammad
This is
Sallallahu
true.
Alaihi Wasallam, was he able to write and read?
As far as I know, no.
Good. Did he have the whole Quran with him or not?
Well, if he wasn't
He
able to
had.
write or read,
So
he
the
wasn't-
Quran-
he didn't write it.
When we speak about the Quran, it is the revealed words that has been inspired by God to Prophet Muhammad.
According to you, it has been inspired.
Okay.
According
Now-
to me, there could be other possibilities.
Well,
This is
according
our
to
definition.
Muslims,
Yeah, I know, I know.
Recited
revealed
But
the
this
by
is,
God, right?
if you want,
it
if you want
it was inspired to Muhammad, but it was revealed by God to
Revealed,
through,
yes.
through the intercessor who is Jibril or Gabriel.
There are different possibilities to it. That's
I
one
know that's-
possibility.
Now,
the
are you
Muslim
following?
understanding, and
Are you
that's
following my idea that when we speak about the Quran, we are not talking about what was written and produced by Uthman. We are talking about what started before Uthman in time of Prophet
About
Muhammad.
the recitings.
Now, the recitation. Even
The
Quran
recitations,
can mean recitation. as
Okay,
well.
fair enough. No
Are you with
problem
me?
with that.
So it was written on different materials in time of the Prophet.
Okay.
Abu Bakr gathered all the materials in one place, and Osman came later and standardized it and made
What do
one
you mean by
volume.
Okay,
standardized it?
so
Yeah.
so here's where I can jump in. So basically, what happened was because Islam was spreading so fast, and there were various different like recitations based on the different locations of where the Muslims were, right? Like in Sham in Syria, and those parts, people were reciting it in a different way versus in Arabia where it had initially started. So what ended up happening was people were reciting it in different ways. So there were different dialects, but it was the same text that everyone was reciting because it was only one. There was only one text that was memorized and taught and spread. So what Uthman ended up doing was he standardized the book. First of all, he compiled everything that was kind of piecemeal. People
No, that
memorized.
was done
Okay.
before.
No,
May I-
that
may
was-
I
no,
add
that was
something?
done.
No, that was done before.
May I
Uthman's
answer?
think she's
great-
listening or
Uthman's
something.
great,
It's just-
his great contribution to Islam was that he standardized it into a book. He turned the Quran into a book, and that's and then
What
what?
Abu Bakr did already.
No,
No,
he,
there is
what
no
did Abu
source.
Bakr
There
do?
is no source. Can
That's
you
not
believe
What
it?
did Abu Bakr do then?
He gathered all the written materials.
That's what she
He
explained
didn't
to you
make
already.
a
But he's not
volume. He
listening.
didn't make a book.
yeah.
Now,
The written
now we
materials,
need
you
to
gather
make
them
it fruitful.
inside
We need
a
to
book.
we need to make it.
We are having a discussion in words that make of the meaning of the words. We're not
No,
actually
we're-
arguing what happened.
No,
It's
but-
semantics
we can.
discussion.
But
No, it's
anyway,
not-
we need
it's
to
not
go slowly.
semantics, though, because there's a difference between compiling papers and just sort of like keeping them in a space and then actually binding a book and
Come
turning it
on.
and anyways, what is this
Okay,
point?
listen,
Sister,
I can
sister,
call
one
this a
second,
book.
1 second,
I can call this a book.
I want to know
What's
what
the-
is.
no, wait, wait.
So
What
far,
did-
It's not a book until it's complete with all the scripture inside.
Okay,
of it,
if I
right?
tell you these are my scriptures,
Now-
these are the scriptures which I will use to make my own book, my own prophecies.
But that's not what happened.
So
during
this is-
Abu
wait.
Bakr. He, I mean,
No,
he
no,
had,
wait,
I mean,
wait.
you could say he initially
My
brought
sister,
everything
my
together,
sister,
but he didn't
my sister.
compile
I
it.
wanna.
He did compile them
And
together.
another
you
and
know.
another thing that Uthman did, by the way, which is also important to note, is that he sent reciters to different parts of Arabia in order to standardize the way that the Quran was recited as well. And so when that happened, as Islam spread, people knew exactly how to recite it, and that kind of adds to the.
Okay.
This is Uthman.
My
Same
sister,
as
my
Uthman.
sister. Just allow me, please. Allow me, please.
Sorry, go ahead.
Okay.
The floor
Again,
is yours.
do you mind to continue if I speak with you, or you do not want me to speak?
No, look, I just don't understand
Because
very
every
well
time I try
the
to say something,
differentiation
you are leaving
between
me.
what I'm saying and what you're saying. No, I'm not. I'm not starting to
Okay.
talk to her
So
out
far-
of nowhere.
so far-
I'm answering her
so far,
questions.
the
I'm talking
point-
to you if she talks to me.
So far, you are making points
That's,
and what is written in your paper.
Sorry?
Why you are afraid to discuss what you are writing here?
He's
not afraid of it at all.
Then please, let's go back.
That's exactly what you're doing
Then
right
please,
now.
no, I want to discuss what you are writing here. You do not want to discuss what you are
that
writing.
Uthman burned the books, burned the different Qurans that they had.
Ah, okay.
Left only
Again-
one version of the
Again,
Quran.
you are
Is that,
repeating.
wait, is that what you want to discuss?
Again, sister, have I explained what's Quran for him? He's saying
He needs to
Osman
define what he
burned
means by
Qurans.
Qur'an.
Linguistically,
Listen,
what
if
is
you,
Quran?
if
I
you're
define
talking
for
about the
him. Can I
Quran
speak?
as recitations,
Pavlov,
as something
Pavlov,
remembered, then
Pavlov.
yeah, of course he
Don't
couldn't
make-
burn that. But I'm talking about
I'm
the books
respecting you as
that
an
Abu
intelligent
Bakr
individual.
made, that Abu Bakr
Pavlov,
collected.
Pavlov. Listen, I want you to go today home with a lesson. Quran is not a physical material thing that you can burn.
Okay, there
Are
we
you
go.
with
That's
me?
the problem of this argument.
What
I'm
is
talking about the Quran as a book.
You are talking about what was written in time of the Prophet. It was not one book.
No, I'm talking about what was created after the death of the Prophet. The
After
Quran
the
didn't
death-
exist when
After the
Muhammad
death of
was
the
alive.
Prophet, what is
Yes.
your source that somebody created something and says Quran after the death of the Prophet? Who told you this? Give me
So
source
once
here.
again,
Where you learn this from?
Once again,
I'm not going to
once
let
again.
you out of the hook.
Once again, Abu Bakr united all different
Was
parts,
it written
all
in time of
different
the Prophet
verses
or after?
of the
What he
Quran
gathered?
after the death of the Prophet.
This
You
what
agree
he
to that?
gathered. Was it written
Okay, well,
within?
let's go step by step. You
within the
agree
time?
that Abu Bakr united all the different texts, all the different things
No,
about.
I'm
You
not
don't agree
saying
with that. Well, then you don't agree with
you are saying
Salih al-Bukhari.
you have before anything. You just have said there was materials written after the death of the Prophet.
No, that's
And
not what I
Abu-
said.
Did you hear him
I
saying
said
this?
no. Listen, I told
No,
you
no,
the
he didn't
Quran.
say that. I don't
Exactly.
think he
Okay,
said
okay.
that.
I told
Say
you.
again. It is on camera
Pay attention,
anyway.
Pay attention.
I am.
Pay attention. I told you that the Quran as a book, as a collective of all the things that Muhammad said, was created only after Muhammad died.
There was nothing written in time of Prophet Muhammad, you're saying?
Once again, I told you that the collection of all the different things that Muhammad said,
Yes.
all the different recitations he gave of the Quran, was only made, that collection of different texts, pay attention to this detail, was only made after Muhammad died.
This is not my question.
Your
was
question
there writings,
is if there was
writings,
something
was
written
there
while
anything
Muhammad
written?
was
No,
alive.
no, my question, was there any writings made? Anyone wrote anything and said this is the Quran after the Prophet death?
So he's
What was
asking,
gathered
did
by
people
Abu
write-
Bakr?
Well,
the
it is a
materials that
possibility.
Abu Bakr gathered.
It is a possibility,
Possibility
that people
on
wrote
your
something
mind only. But
in
what
my
we-
mind only. Can
yeah,
you disprove it?
because what we
I
are
can't
taught,
prove it, but you can.
I,
can't
I'm
also
proving.
disprove it.
Allow me. Abu
Okay, I'll
Bakr,
allow you.
all the Quran, all what was written, from the Quran, it was written in materials and gathered in by Abu Bakr in one room. Okay, he collected it from houses of the wives of the Prophet. Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. Yeah, was kept in the houses of the Prophet wives during the life of the Prophet. After the Prophet passed away, Abu Bakr gathered everything in one room. But he gathered only what was written under the supervision of the Prophet. This is what I'm saying, that nothing was written after the death of the Prophet. I hear you saying something was written
Yes.
from these materials.
Because you can't be sure of that.
So
We
your
are
point
sure of
is
that.
No,
that
you
there
can't
was
be
no-
sure of
Okay,
that.
okay, fine,
that
fine.
there was
fine.
no new material written
Now,
after the
Abu
death
Bakr,
of
you are
the
saying
Prophet.
we are not sure, we say
And-
we are
and what
sure.
he's
What
saying
is that?
is-
No, I am
what
not
is-
sure of that either.
Okay,
what
fine,
I'm
fine,
telling
fine,
you is
fine.
that you cannot prove that
Fine.
everything was written
Fine.
under the Prophet's
Just follow the
supervision.
story and you're going to find out.
To the best
No.
of our ability, we can, though. I
So
mean,
far-
what Pablo's
if you
trying to
follow
say is
the
we don't
Quran.
have any certainty whatsoever in life, period, right? But I mean, based on what we know, based on all of these historical accounts, and there were
Which is stolen?
multiple,
Which is
well,
stolen?
people who were alive at the time, people who were, in those circles and who interacted with the Muslims. We know that based on historical events, to the
Exactly.
best of our
And we have
ability,
money.
One of the
this
big
is how
problems.
the
We have,
things
we
are.
That
have,
is one of the
Well,
big
we have
Pavlov
the
was saying that, well,
Osmani,
you can't
the
be sure
Osmani
about
copy
anything, and
exists in Turkey until now.
All right,
how
I would like to recommend
To
a
the
very
extent
good
that
book
to
to
the
everybody
extent that we
who's
can-
here. and
No, no,
who's
before-
watching.
before you
It's
finish.
called In God's Path. It tries to kind of put together the history done by the Christians and the history done by the Muslims. Because before the existence of Islam, before Muhammad's birth and when he started, uniting the Arabic tribes, there wasn't a lot of history written about the Arabs. The Arabs did not write a lot of history about themselves. So most of the history at that time that we have comes from Christians.
No, we
Eastern
have the
Roman
Arabic
Empire.
poetry. Actually, you are wrong.
So who?
And it was written
My
down
si-
later,
My
and-
sister, no,
and
no,
that's
no.
a whole
If
other
you have
science.
studied Arabic civilization, Arabs used to record their history and poetry. Every tribe,
Oral. Most of the history was
yes,
oral.
each tribe used
Okay,
to
so
have.
if it's
I want to make a
oral,
point.
it's not history.
My friend.
History
No, it
needs
is.
to be
Can,
written.
Who told you that?
can you listen, please?
Who told you that? So you're telling me if your,
Hashim,
if
one
your
thing-
grandfather told you
History
Hashim,
began
Hashim,
when history
one thing,
started
one
being
thing, one
written.
thing, one thing.
With the invention of writing, that's when history began.
no, but-
Everything we know before that is
do you know
prehistory.
the Iliad?
Yes.
The Iliad is history, maybe mixed with some myth, but this was orally transmitted.
but
It
it was
doesn't.
written
No,
down
wait. So
eventually.
your what do you say criteria that history is only the one that's written? It's really neither here nor
Iliad
there.
is not
Hashim,
history.
we have all
Who
the
gave you
poetry.
this
Iliad
criteria?
is not
Wait,
history.
I want to know who gave
You're
the
comparing mythology to history.
No, I'm
You
not saying
cannot do
compare.
that.
I'm saying history.
No, we're talking
makes-
about history here.
Can
You're
I-
talking
can I
about
have
the
a word in
Iliad.
between?
No.
Okay,
sorry,
where did you
bro.
get this
But
criteria?
You're talking about Iliad. Iliad is not history. It's like me telling the Bible is history. You need to follow what the Bible
Okay,
says.
so what is history according to you? What's
I
history?
mean, the
History
Bible
is-
was written after the
If
life
the
of-
poet is
of
going to
Christ,
talk about
right? So if we're
historical
gonna
events
say
that happened
that,
for
we
them.
can
Most
only
of the Bible
record-
was written before Christ.
No, it was.
What?
He's
Before
Anyways,
Christ?
talking about the
we're not
Old
about the
You're talking
Bible.
Old Testament.
What about
So-
Arabic
so
history?
the New
exactly.
Testament-
They
the New
use
Testament
texts
was-
I want to
Old
know.
Testament
I want to know.
in
Where
the
did you get this criteria that history is only the one that's written? Where
Yeah,
did you get
because
this?
that's. I
Who
mean,
made this
you-
criteria? You just made it
common
up?
knowledge.
The
No,
New
it's not common
Testament
knowledge.
was
Good
also
question,
written
good
by
question.
So you're
Christ.
telling
Before the
Testament
creation
falls
of
apart
writing,
based on
we do
that
not
logic.
consider
Okay,
that
let me ask you
history.
this.
That is prehistory.
Paulo, let me ask you this.
That is prehistory.
If your grandfather told you a story about his life, yes, and it's not written anywhere, that's not history?
It's not history. It's a story that is.
I think you should go and read what
I
history
think
really
you
is.
should
Okay.
study some history because you don't.
I
seem
just
to know-
told you, your
don't
grandfather-
seem to know the
Why
right
shouting?
terms.
Why getting triggered?
Because you shouted at
I'm not.
Okay,
I'm
okay.
quite calm.
Okay.
When your grandfather tells you a
No.
story,
For
for example,
don't
there are.
interrupt me, Hashim. I'm not going to allow you to derail
Okay,
this
okay.
conversation.
What do you mean derail?
History
I'm
is
showing you that your
written.
criteria is
when
wrong.
It's not written.
There are
It's
many
not
people.
history.
There are many
It's
people
prehistory.
who have told
Well,
history.
I mean,
No,
we
no,
can
no,
Historic
no,
go
facts
back
Hashim,
which
and
are
sorry,
written
no,
down.
no. I'm
Okay,
sorry.
unless you
You're
show me-
derailing this conversation.
Unless you show me
You're
a
derailing
reference,
this
I'm not going to
conversation.
accept
Anyways,
your
anyways, it
criteria.
is
Can I
written.
just
We
say
have
something?
Akhi Hashim.
We do
He's
have
talking
accounts
about
of all
writing.
of this in Islam, so I don't understand
Absolutely,
what
yeah.
the contention is.
We have the entire
accounts of
Quran
the
in a
hadith
manuscript
and-
form, and just because Paulo says it's not existing, should we believe his?
No,
Never said
I
it's
don't
not
think.
existing.
I don't
So,
think that
the,
was his
so you,
point.
so does the manuscript of the Quran exist?
Excuse me?
Does the manuscript from the first century
Osmani.
The manuscript from the
of the Quran from the first century
Osmani one.
except
from the first one.
first century Al-Hijra,
What is Al-Hijra?
Al-Hijra, Islamic
Al-Hijra.
calendar.
Muslim calendar.
The Islamic
the
calendar.
Islamic calendar. This is the basic knowledge you should know in all if you're doing Islamic understanding of the manuscript.
Manuscript.
Okay, what does
If
it
you
say?
don't know
What
the
does it say?
basics, what I'm saying is that the Topkapi manuscript is more than what 97, 98% complete. Yes, you know what bit is missing? The bit which is in the front and the back, because that's the most likely probability of the pages being damaged, because it's such a historic book. Now, by the way, the Quran, the main way it was actually propagated was orally. And do not say this oral transmission and tradition doesn't exist in Islam. It exists to this day. You go to any masjid today, any masjid, yes, they will have a Quran class, and you can hear.
Unfortunately.
But
What do you mean,
we also
unfortunately?
have written,
I mean that if you teach
we also
religion
have
in your
written
schools, that
accounts
means your education is not very good.
Well,
Christians don't
That's
do
your. That's
that. Even Christians don't do
you know.
that. Come on,
That's
man.
your criteria, and it's neither here nor there. So that's your opinion, and you're entitled to it. But the important thing I'm trying to tell you is that the tradition of oral transmission is still alive today, and neither you nor anyone can change this
It
fact.
is still used by
Okay?
African
So
tribes
don't
until
tell me
now.
history only means what is only written down.
Listen,
That is,
I think you
that
need to
is
get
your-
familiarized with the meaning of history.
Well, you have to get
Because-
familiarized with the
no,
basics
no, no,
like
no,
Al-Hijra.
no.
Anyways, we
History
have
is
it
not
written,
what you
Akhi.
say it
Who
is.
said that?
History,
Who told you that?
History, the definition of history
Yeah,
is
where
what
is
is
that?
written.
Where is that? Show me. Who said that? Give me one scholar who made that as a definition.
Definition, yes.
You know, you
Why
just,
do we have the
just
meaning of
because Pavlov
prehistory?
says.
No, wait.
That's it.
You
We don't
can look
accept
it
it.
up. Everybody can look it up. I'm not,
No,
I'm
you
not
look it
making
up
this
because you're the one who
You
said
bring
it.
the onus.
The onus is on you. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah.
Why
The
do we
onus
have
is-
the term
The
of
onus is on the
prehistory?
one.
Hashim,
the onus
Every
is
one
on
of
the
us
answer.
here have a history.
Why
It's
do we
not
have the
written.
term of
Is it
prehistory?
history or not?
Yes.
It's
What is
history.
prehistory?
Prehistory is just a way of saying something from very ancient time.
There we go. You
I
don't
know-
know
I know
what
it's-
prehistory is.
Oh, you're saying
You do not know what
So
history
you're saying
is.
before the
You do
pre-
not know what prehistory is.
I just told you.
follow a religious book as your absolute
No,
history.
can I just
No.
As it was
No.
transmitted
A
orally.
religious
Muslim
book.
Quran is
A
history.
religious book is not history.
We
But
do
anyway,
have
you
some-
Sorry,
made the
Hashim, but you need
You
to
made
study.
that
You need to
statement
go
that
back to
history is
school.
only what is
You
written
need to
down.
go back to school and you need to listen more to history
me the evidence.
than to Quran
If you have gone to
recitations.
school, show me the evidence.
But we do have
Why are you
Listen
reluctant?
less to Quran
Why are you reluctant?
recitations.
We do
and
Why are you
have
listen
some
more
reluctant?
to history.
We have the oral tradition. I don't care whether you agree or
But
disagree.
we also have
Pavlov,
American
Pavlov,
tradition.
Pavlov.
You can say
You're
whatever
neither
you
here
want,
nor
but
there.
the definition
By the
of
way,
history
are you-
is to be written.
Are you the same guy who told me I'm not even sure if I exist or not?
Of course I'm the same guy. I'm the same guy. that told this
So
story.
if a
Wait,
guy,
whoa,
if
whoa,
a guy is
whoa,
not
whoa.
even sure
Do
he
you want me
exists,
to answer? Do you want me to answer?
Yes,
Do
do
you
you
want me to
exist?
answer or not?
Do you
Do you
exist?
want me to answer
Yes,
or not?
please.
Do you want me to answer or not? Will you give me some time to
yes.
answer? Okay, give me some time to answer.
Do you know what question
My
I'm answering?
exist. You're not allowing me to answer.
Go on, answer.
He's a nice guy, Hashim.
There
Let
you
him
go.
speak.
There you go. There you go. There you go.
Just because it's nice
Alright.
doesn't mean it's nice.
All right, let's answer the question: do I actually exist or not?
Yes, do you?
My existence might be in a different level than what I actually perceive. The perception of my existence is different than to your perception of my existence. And my perception is not perfect. That is why I told you I'm not sure if I exist in the way that I perceive myself.
So you're.
Do you understand now
So,
what
so
I
the
said?
guy who wants to
Why
talk
you're
about history
talking?
and prehistory,
Why
he's
are
not
you
even
here?
sure if he exists.
Why you come here?
Now, why
You
would
see
I?
how he distorts the argument?
now you see the
I just
perception.
told him I'm not certain of the way I exist in.
But if
I
you're not
see
certain about
myself,
your own
I
self,
feel
you
myself, I
existing?
perceive myself.
you
But
existing?
my perception is not perfect. Your thought that your perception is perfect is the highest arrogance I've ever seen in
Okay,
the
so
world.
let me ask you this, Pavlov.
That is the
Okay,
arrogance.
Pavlov,
that is
Pavlov,
the
stop
lack
calling
of
names.
the
I didn't
lack
call you
of
names.
sincerity
I
that
didn't
some
call you
people
names.
have here.
So stop the ad hominems and just answer
Well,
the
you
question.
can call
Let me ask you this.
You did the
Can I
biggest
just
ad
say
Stop
hominem
pointing
in the
fingers.
world.
Very good.
Okay,
Can
okay,
I
okay.
say
Okay,
Keep it
yes,
civilized,
sister,
please.
1 second. Let
Okay,
me ask you.
I'll do
You
it with my
said
hand.
that your perception, by your own perception, you're not certain whether you exist or not. Am I right?
I am not certain that my perception of myself is absolute.
It's absolute.
We can
So-
continue on
so-
this. I
so-
want to continue on this, please.
Wait, shake.
The conversation was too derailed.
Brother, 1 second. So can you be, based on your perception, can you be absolutely certain about anything in the universe?
No.
Good. So your
History.
So your wait a minute. Wait a minute. So, wait a
Of
minute.
course, I am not
Wait a minute.
certain of
Brother,
history.
brother, wait.
Okay.
Because listen,
Okay.
this is what
Pavlov, you said you
religious
let me
people
talk.
will never
Let me talk.
You
understand.
also said you let me talk. So
I
can
will.
I just say something
I will. But
first?
So
let
who
me
talks?
just
Who
last
talks?
statement
Do you
and
talk?
I'll
Do you
Let's
talk?
have
Do you
gonna
talk?
let-
Who's the
One
one who
last
talks?
statement and then you can talk.
Okay, you talk.
One last
Let him
statement.
talk. No.
One last
Okay,
statement and
let's
you
talk.
talk.
Let him
Moderate it,
talk.
What you
Among
mentioned
Okay,
as
let's talk.
what you mentioned as common sense earlier, that we should go by the definition of history, is also not certain. So basically any definition in your book is not certain. Then basically everything that we talk about
There
is
is no history
uncertain.
even.
There's nothing about certainty.
Yes.
Maybe the earth is a spherical shape is not certain.
Yeah,
Yes?
yeah.
Maybe those flat earthers who say that the earth is flat,
Yeah.
maybe they are also not certain.
Yeah.
So nothing in this, according to his perception,
Yeah.
can ever be
Nice
certain.
strawman. Nice
Alright?
strawman, by the way. I like
Okay,
the
now-
strawman.
now go
I
on.
have a point
Go on.
to make, and this is taking us back to the earlier conversation. I think it's important that we mention this. You talk about Islam and how it's an oral tradition, and we had the Quran, and that was established. It's still an oral tradition in many societies.
both. Written
but
and oral.
it's also written,
Yeah.
and I think that we do have a very strong historical chain of events.
Transmission,
that
yes.
Chain of transmission.
You can
that
see it, you
happened
can meet people who have it.
And it's set in stone, and that hasn't changed in the 1400 years since it was written. So I think we need to establish that Islam is both, in its inception it was oral, and that was because of the culture of the Arabs, but very soon after that everything was written and documented, and the reason why we have hadith and the rest of it is because it was cemented in stone in writing. So that's important.
Yeah.
I just wanted to
You
get that
consider
out
the
there.
Quran to be history.
No, we don't say Quran is history.
I wouldn't say it's history.
We say it's a religious book. We say it's
It's a
something which
historical-
is a revelation of Allah.
It's a
But you
yeah,
see, look,
the word of
Paula, with all due respect, there is something in English we say that if that little knowledge is dangerous. And because you do not understand the translation of the Quran, yes, do you know, for example, even the Hadith, which is collected 200 years after the Prophet ﷺ, even that has a strong what do you say, connection to the Prophet ﷺ based on the chain of transmission, based on ilm al-rijal. Have you heard of this term, ilm al-rijal? Ilm al-rijal is that every person in the chain of transmission, yes, his biography is present. So we don't have just the first name or the last name, we have the entire history of that person, whether he was someone reliable, whether he was someone truthful, whether he was someone old with a memory loss, yes, or whether any other things. So these things are something that we have to actually study. There's a very good book I would suggest to you. About 2 minutes.
Oh, we will take a bit longer.
Stop being sarcastic. Listen
I'm
to
not
this.
being sarcastic.
Are you
I'm being more honest than ever.
condescending?
No, I'm not being condescending.
The only time you're
I
honest.
just want to have my answer to
Yeah,
your
but
question.
you will have your answer. But the thing is this: if you do not,
I will have my answer, or will I give my
if you don't have the understanding, the basic understanding of the transmission of the Quran, how it was transmitted, then go and read this book. It is by M.M. Azami, and it is present on, it is available on at Amazon. It's called The History of the Quranic Text. It tells you how the Quran came into being from the time of revelation till the time of preservation. It tells you the entire history, and it tells you how much not only time but how much importance was given to every single aspect of the transmission. And like I said, for the hadith, forget about the Quran, just the hadith itself, which is the secondary source after the Quran. Yes, even for that, the stringent science of the collection of the hadith is something that is, you will not find as much importance given to the collection as any other books like the Bible. Because even that the narration of the chain of narration, every one of them has been meticulously collected. So even if one person had something like he was quite old and he was known for lapsing in his memory, they would say that this hadith is now not considered as authentic as sahih. They'll demote it, they'll consider it to be weak or something like that. Just for one simple criteria like that. Now, in the history of mankind, I don't think any other book has been collected with such stringent science of preservation. And I'm talking about the hadith, not the Quran. The Quran is even more. Something called mutawatir. Mutawatir is that multiple attestations by independent sources. So it's not like I told you, you told him, and you told. That is one chain. But we are talking about multiple such attestation, and they all come to the conclusion that whether you are in America, whether you're in Australia, whether you are in Asia or Africa, yes, when you join those together, they all say the same thing at the end. Now this is what I'm telling you. It's not as simple as, oh, we don't have a manuscript, so that's it, it's false. No. You see, the reason the Bible relies on written.
I don't know. Do you understand do you understand what Hashim is saying?
No, it's important because the Bible is also a collection of religious texts which they claim to be from God. Now, are you agnostic or atheist? I don't know.
I'm agnostic.
So for an agnostic person, if you're going to critique these books of religion, then it is very important that at least you look at the basics of how they were collected. But if you don't have that, then I'm sorry to say, Pavlov, you are working on either speculations or semantics or things just from hearsay.
Exactly. Working on speculations. I'm working
It is
on
speculation.
But did you know?
Al-Bukhari, which
But my
says
friend, did you
that
know?
Uthman burned the different Qurans.
Yes, but burning is the
Who
best
was
way.
he to choose the Qurans to burn?
Wait. Do you know what burning of the Quran means? Sheikh, please.
Akhi, you are
Semantics
repeating the same
conversation.
argument.
No.
Allow me
No,
to
no. Do you
rather
understand?
answer you on the other.
Akhi Hashim,
Do you understand
there
what
was
it
no
means
different
about the
Qurans.
burning of the
Even
Quran?
your language, you are repeating the same mistake again.
Yeah.
Which mistake?
There was no different Qurans. This language is
There you
wrong
go.
language.
Yeah.
There you
By the way, you know this burning
So
of the
which
Quran?
Qurans
Ya
did he
akhi,
burn?
Wait.
what is the
You
relation?
know-
Right
you know
there
first-
is
Did he
material.
burn the right Quran?
You cannot burn the
Good
Quran.
question. I'll answer that. Okay. Listen.
He is
The
talking
burning
about
of the
what is the material written
Habibi,
material.
I'll answer him.
You cannot say
I will
burn the
answer
Quran.
him. I'll answer him. Don't worry.
It is memorized. You can never burn it.
Muhammad Ali, I'll answer it. Don't worry. Okay.
When
So,
they united the Quran in a book,
Paulo,
you can
Paulo,
burn
I will answer
the
that
book.
question.
Can
It's
you
very
not
simple.
burn the book? The book is what I'm talking about.
How Osman is
Not the
burning
memorized.
book? He is working on making a volume. There was no one volume that was united as one volume. There was no.
There were different
There was-
volumes with different things.
No, there was.
And he
Here
burned
you
all
go.
the ones that
Was
he
there
did not deem
volumes?
to be the
Was
real
there
Quran.
It's a
volumes
very
before
simple
Osman?
answer. If you allow me, I'll answer it. Look,
Go ahead.
Look, something called a standardized Quran, something called an official Quran. Official means recognized by the authorities. Yes. You said who is Osman to say this? By the way, Osman, who is the third caliph of Islam, he had memorized the Quran from cover to cover. Yes. The first caliph, Abu Bakr, Umar, Uthman, Ali, all four of them had memorized it already. Other people, the scribes of the Prophet ﷺ, you know, whenever he got the what do you say, the revelation, the Quran, every single verse and the chapters, they were collected by the scribes already. So they had, not as a mushaf as a whole, but they had different what do you say, independent pamphlets with them, the scribes, and they had actually already written this.
Yeah, they had different parts of the Quran.
Yes, no, different parts, yeah, and they had also memorized it. So it was written and memorized. But like I said earlier, the most important way had always been, the prime source or the prime way of preservation had always been memory. Because you can destroy all the Qurans in the world.
Which again makes it so much less reliable.
No, it's not. If you know,
If it is memorized,
if you know independent attestation on a
Guys,
multiple
memory
level,
is not as reliable as
Yeah, but
writing
if-
something
if-
down.
Really? Okay, let me
Yes.
ask you this.
If
Let
one
me,
has-
let me ask you this.
Definitely.
No,
Listen,
it's
no,
illogical.
listen,
No,
guys,
no,
we
no, but
come
you
again
asked-
to the
This is
discussion
not
about
true.
history.
No, but you asked the
Let me
question.
give you an example
You asked the
about
question about the
Let me
burning.
give you an
Can
example
I
about
answer
my
that?
own people, about
You-
in Scythia. You know, the Scythians, they did not write a lot of their history. All we know, the most part of what we know about their history, at least about the nomad Scythians, are the Kurgans. The Kurgans are tall mountains under which the Scythian nobles and kings were buried with their treasures. And on their treasures, there were markings, there were things that were, pictures, there were sculptures, blah blah blah. That's the most history we know about the Scythians. Why? Because they did not write it.
we also-
That's
but
the
we wrote our
problem.
history.
When they
What's
don't
the
write it,
issue?
it becomes very flawed. That
But
is
we
what
have
I'm
written
saying.
accounts
here.
of what happened.
Yeah,
So
you
it's
you
okay
keep
to
denying.
do it.
You keep
It was
denying.
based mostly on remembered things.
No, no, no,
I
no,
mean,
no.
is
We
it
have
all history
we have
based on
you-
remembered things. That's literally
You
all.
remember
of
earlier I
history.
told you about
you
the-
remember something, you witnessed an account, and then you write it. And by the way, there were like literally dozens, if not hundreds, of people at the time who had memorized this one version of the Quran, and that was the version that was written down. So your question about Qur'ans is actually quite misleading, because the real, the reality of what's embedded in your question is that there were different dialects, and how it was
Accents.
recited, different accents. But in terms of the lettering and the wording and all of that, that hasn't changed, and we can be pretty damn sure about that.
Your
based on what
assumption
we
of
have.
that is just as good as
If
my
you are-
assumption that that's not what happened.
But why do you think it's
No,
assumption?
It's just as valid.
No, no.
It's
We,
just
we have the Birmingham manuscript from the
I
1st
don't-
century
you
Al
haven't
Hijra.
exactly shown
It was
why that's
carbon
the
dated
case.
by the Oxford University.
Why did Uthman burn the different Qurans?
You didn't let me answer that.
Why?
Well, I was asking. You didn't let me.
You've been answering this for like half an hour now.
No, I
Hashim.
wasn't. Was I?
If you
Answering
want
for
to
half an
answer
hour?
it, then
You didn't give me
answer.
2 minutes.
No, I gave you time, Hashim.
No,
I
you
gave
did
you
not.
lots
Not
and
about
lots
the-
of
not about the
time,
burning of the
and
Quran.
and you did not
No,
answer it.
you did
now
not
answer.
give me
Why
time.
did Uthman
Yeah.
burn the different
The
Qurans?
way of getting rid of unauthorized Qurans was by burning. So, for example, if you have, let's
it's
say,
in a different
let's say you had a memory disk, yes, and there were many memory disks, and the program that was written on the memory disk was flawed. Now you have a newer version. So what would you do? You would erase those
You
ones
know it's flawed.
because
How do you know it's flawed? The one that you're burning is a
Based
lie,
on
and the one that you're
consensus.
following is true.
Based
you let
on
me finish?
consensus. Based
What
on
consensus?
based on the
Uthman was the
consensus
one who was
that people had.
deciding
This
all
is
that.
about the preservation of the Quran.
Is he God? Is Uthman your actual God?
No,
Is
no.
Uthman your actual
Stop twisting-
prophet?
stop
I'm not
twisting
twisting
my
anything.
words.
Listen,
Okay.
guys,
Can I finish?
Muhammad
Can
was
I
not the
finish
only
what I
one
was
who
saying
made
about
the book.
God? No, it wasn't.
don't worry,
It
calm
wasn't
down.
him who
Let's
made- you're
continue.
right, it was
History
God
hasn't been
who made
whitewashed.
the book, according to the Muslim
What does it have to do with whitewash?
yeah, I was about to
Can I say something? So,
Hasn't it?
Pablo-
Many Muslims are white though.
That's what you want.
Sure,
That's what
man.
you're calling.
Okay, so basically, so Paolo, to finish about the burning of the Quran, is that, like I said, it was not authoritative. So people would write their own copies, and they would put in the commentary, they would put their own commentary, they would write things like notes in the site and all. Now what happened when time passed was that they were getting mixed up with what the Quran was and what their commentary was. So some of them were memorizing the hadiths and some of them. So later on, when the Prophet ﷺ himself had said that you have to now write the hadith separately and the Quran separately, even then maybe people might have. So to get rid of all this mixture, what Uthman did was now we have an authorized Quran. Now there were different.
And it was based on consensus.
Yeah.
He had people he consulted
Absolutely.
with, and this
Whose
is important to mark.
Consensus?
based
No,
on the
continue with
people of
Hashim.
Medina,
Finish your Hashim,
Based
please.
on the people who were with the Prophet, based on the people who were.
So one of the
So you are following your prophet just as much You're following these people from Medina, and just as much as you're following Uthman.
By the way, following the Prophet is in the Quran. Atiullah, Atiul Rasul.
Fair enough.
Yes, so the Quran,
I don't
the Quran
understand
itself
the point.
instructs us to follow the Prophet.
Listen,
So I don't know what
the
your
Prophet
point is.
might have come up with all the verses. It's possible. But if other people were meddling with the Quran,
They were not
choosing what's the right Quran, what's the
No, no,
wrong
no.
Quran,
No, no,
what's the
no,
right
no,
scripture,
no,
what's
no,
the
no.
wrong
This is where-
scripture, then it
this
was
is
not
where
done only by
speculation comes in. I was talking about
Muhammad.
earlier.
What speculation?
Yes, it is.
The book was not written by
The
Muhammad.
book
He did
was
not write
memorized.
the
Do you
book.
not understand?
Memorized.
Yes.
It's very flawed.
Maybe your memory. Maybe your memory is
I
flawed.
will tell you something.
Okay?
He doesn't understand.
Something
What
which
does
is
it have to do
tested.
with me being European?
Listen, something which is tested multiple times, multiple attestations.
Oh, is it Eurocentric? Why?
Because the overemphasis and reliance upon the written word is a Eurocentric kind of contribution to humanity.
Because that's the only way they can do it.
History did not begin in Europe.
but
It began in Mesopotamia,
I
which is
tot-
located
I-
in the
I-
Middle
I-
East.
I totally agree.
You, bro, are an
I
ignorant
totally
person.
Okay. Just let me.
No, no need
just
to
let me
name
clarify
calling.
something.
No, he's calling me Eurocentric. I call him ignorant.
It's not an assault.
Hey,
You
listen,
are.
yes, it is.
You are not Eurocentric.
How am I
Excuse me.
Eurocentric?
Pavlov, sir. Pavlov.
I just told you that the first civilization was the Sumerian
By the
civilization
way,
in the Middle East.
Pavlov.
In the Middle East, you should learn.
You know what
guys.
you
You should learn that history.
You said that memorizing is flawed based on what?
Sorry?
You said memorizing is flawed based on what?
Because writing something down is much more trustworthy.
Who told you that? I can change something that's written.
There we
I can
go.
change
There we
something
go.
that's written.
Subjectivity is all you
It's not
have.
subjectivity.
Question.
No, you're the one subjectivity.
Pavlov, question.
Because anything
Are
that
you
is written
familiar?
down can easily be altered. Do you
Pavlov.
not know that? Imagine
Pavlov,
this.
question.
If something, wait, brother. Imagine this. If someone wrote a line, a statement, and in that statement they made a mistake, and this mistaken statement gets copied over multiple times.
Are we
How
really
can-
having a discussion? What is more trustworthy, memorizing or writing
Yes,
down?
we are.
Are we really
Yes,
having this
yes,
discussion?
because I just proved to you that something that is written down can easily be altered.
Why did humans write anything if memorizing is better?
Because they did both.
What?
They did both.
They did both.
No, but why writing?
Who told
Why
you?
write
Who
when
told you?
memorizing
Who
is
told
better?
You have no evidence other than your subjectivity
Why
that memorizing.
write when memorizing
Let
is
me tell you
better?
something. Let me tell you
I didn't say it's better. I said they can both be.
You said it's more trustworthy.
No, it's more trustworthy. It's done on a multiple attestation.
No,
Listen,
Hashim,
let me
Hashim,
tell you
sorry, but
something.
you...
Well, I'm sorry, you're wrong as well.
I wanted
Your
to
subjectivity.
say to you something, yeah? It's not just only what you say. It's not just one person who's memorizing from the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam.
Multiple
We are
attestations.
talking about
Independent.
many people, independent people.
Attestation.
They memorize from him and then they transfer it to the next generation. We're not talking about one individual or two or three. Now the thing is here in Islam, there is something called our prayer, the 5-day prayer. Do you know what part of our prayer that we recite the Quran, which means it is being checked every single day, even in the salawat, which we pray loudly. We have Maghrib, which is the after the sunset. We have the Isha, the night one, and the Fajr, which we recite it even loudly. And the people behind the Imam. Generally, the very people behind the Imam, they are the one who's able to correct and rectify the Imam, which means it is checked on a daily basis.
And in
It's
Ramadan,
not
the
just
whole
like-
Quran.
It's just checked on a daily basis. So the people who are memorizing, the Quran, they have memorized it and they have checked it with each other. And then the next generation, they have checked it with each other. And that's how it flows. It didn't go to one person to, for example, to twist or to change. So it's not subjective to some person. That's why we say the consensus of the companion of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, which means they get together and then they brought what they have memorized and then they were checking each other. So that's why even the Quran, you cannot imagine even the vowels, even to the smallest thing in the Quran. So that's why the Quran is not just only history book. You understand? So don't
Yeah, it's
compare.
not history at
it's not
all.
no, it's not a history book.
It's not history at all.
I'm
I
not
agree
saying
with that.
it has history.
agree
Hold
more.
on a second. It has history, but it's not a history book. It has science, but it's not a science book. It has many things.
Okay. That's a good point.
So my point is that the Quran was checked even in memorization along with the written one. And they were checking each other. That's how is it. Which means the people who are writing the Quran, they will check it with the memorized and the memorization. And the one who memorized, they will check it with the written one. It goes, vice versa. That's how is it. So it's not just only, you could say, oh, Uthman has banned the Quran. That means it's lost. Who told you this? That Uthman, he has banned the other masahif because of a few reasons. One of the reasons, some of them, he will, for example, he will write part of the Quran. He will not have all of it. And then the people, they will think, maybe people after they say, okay, this is the complete Quran. The other one is wrong. So Uthman, he made sure he brought all this council of the company, brought them, and he said to them, and he was part of them, and he brought the other companions who are known by memorizing the Quran from Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and not just that, and then they checked how it was written and how it was memorized, and then they brought all this. Then they got all what they have gathered from the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and the other ones which is here, writing here, writing, for example, part of it, or some of them they used to write on a skin, some of them they used to write on a bones or something like that, or on a wooden piece or something like that. So he made sure that to ban the other ones and keep this one, which he kept it for himself, and the authorized one by a committee. It's not one person, you understand? It's a committee. Those committee, every single person of them, he has approved by the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam that he is trustworthy to convey the message of Quran. It's something greater than you could even, if you are there, it's something so great to the extent. That's why we believe the Quran is intact. Anyway, we'll wrap up this this conversation.
Let's wrap up.
As we need to go. The other brothers.
You see this manuscript here? Pavlov?
Did you understand that?
See this manuscript here?
Yeah.
This was carbon dated by the Oxford University from the time of Prophet Muhammad. So we have written, this is unlike even the Bible, from the Bible, from the Jesus to the 100 years, you'll not find a single manuscript.
I like how you say even the Bible, as if the Bible is any trustworthy.
No, I'm telling you the other counter.
As if there's any trust to the Bible.
Well, it's whether trust or not, the important thing is about the preservation. Both the books, the Bible and the Quran,
claims to be preserved.
The people who actually believe in them, they claim that it's from God. Yes. So I'm telling you that the Quran, unlike the Old Testament and the New Testament, have something from the person to whom it was revealed within a few decades. Forget about a few hundred years. Within a few decades of his time. Now listen to this. A book like the Old Testament, between Moses and the earliest extant manuscript, you have like 1,000 to 1,100 years gap. And between Jesus and the earliest extant manuscript of the New Testament, you're talking about more than 150 to 200 years. And even that, the early ones are just fragments. Here we are talking about the entire Quran in the Topkapi Museum manuscript.
And in Sana'a, Yemen,
and the Sana'a manuscript.
In Sana'a, Yemen.
Okay, you gave me lots of information.
Yeah.
So go and check.
How does this in any way contradict what I told you?
It contradicts in one way, because you are saying that the best way of preservation is written, but I'm telling you the written thing. For example, most of the written history is like, you heard of the saying, history is by the victors.
Of course.
So what they do is they would write something contrary to what happened actually. So it is either hearsay or fabricated, or sometimes even the truth. I'm not saying it's always false. How are you to ascertain what really happened here? This way of preservation of the written history is never accurate to the point of an independent attestation of the Quran. When I say independent, you're talking about different chains of narration from
Hashim,
many different places.
I think you misunderstand something. Because I will not try to claim as if I have the absolute version of history, as if history is 100% certain. I never claim that. I will not use the same fallacies that you
I'm
do.
talking about the
now
way
the
of
problem is,
preservation.
you say that the things written in the Quran and your history that you are claiming that really happened,
only the Quran.
they are the absolute
I said the
certain.
Quran and the Hadith, at least the Sahih Hadith.
That is the problem.
We have.
I do not claim that what I say is absolutely certain.
Yeah, but you don't claim you exist absolutely.
You do claim that what you're saying is
Paulo,
absolutely
you don't claim
certain.
anything absolute.
I've told you many times.
You don't claim
Yeah, I
anything
told you-
absolute.
No,
Am
no,
I
no,
right?
no, Hashim,
Am I
Hashim,
right?
Hashim, Hashim.
For
There
you,
comes
nothing
the,
is
there comes
absolute.
the ad hominem.
No,
There
no,
comes
no,
the
it's not an ad hominem.
again.
It's a
Yes,
fact.
Yes, it is an
It's a
ad
fact
hominem.
for you.
Yes, it is an ad hominem.
How is it an ad
Because
hominem
you're
if you
not
believe
tackling
it?
the argument. You're ridiculing the argument.
Okay, let me
You're
tell
not
you.
taking. No. I'll let you speak. Let me speak.
Okay, go
I'll
on,
let you speak,
go on.
let me
Fair
speak.
enough, go on.
Okay.
Speak.
We need
So-
to wrap up. By the way, we need to wrap up.
Yeah,
We
yeah.
need to go. So
Very
please
quickly, let him make his
Okay,
point, and then I'll
let-
make one final point, and then
let me make my
inshallah.
final point about if I do exist or not.
Yes.
When I told you I'm not certain of my existence,
don't
again, because it seemed to be hard to understand, for you to understand
There
this.
are some
I understand
consequences.
why. I understand why, because you're a religious person. For you, your knowledge is absolute. Now, the perception of my existence is not absolute.
Which is what I
my
said.
sight is not absolute.
Which is
my
what I said.
feelings are not absolute.
How is that ad
Stop
hominem?
interrupting me, Hashim. I
Yes,
did
let
not
him
interrupt
finish,
you.
let him
I did
finish.
not
I
interrupt
agree
you.
with you.
Be silly.
Okay, go on.
Now, my perception of myself is not the same as your perception of me, and my perception of you is not the same as your perception of yourself. And every single person here has a different perception of different people. Now, what does this mean? My existence depends on my perception. What I told you is that all I have is perception of myself, based on my feelings, based on my knowledge, based on my past. That is why I am not certain of my existence as I see it now. Do you understand it, Hashim?
No need
I
to
cannot
shout.
explain
No
it
need
in
to
any
get
different
condescending.
way.
Okay, by the way, from what I said to you, how is that different? I said
It's completely different.
I said based on your understanding, you're not even sure if you exist. That is what I said.
You
Now,
did
how
not
is it?
understand what
How
I
is it
told you.
different to what you just
You did
explained?
not understand what I told you.
Okay.
By the way, let's agree.
If you did understand,
Hashim,
you are
Hashim,
feigning
Hashim.
as if you didn't understand. Hashim, you
Let's
need to
agree.
stop
Sorry?
playing dumb sometimes.
Let's agree.
Existence and perception. What he's saying is that
I know you're triggered because you have
I
been
am
found out.
triggered.
You are. That's why you're. Okay.
Good
now,
one, Hashim, good
now,
one.
Your
now,
IQ
now,
has been
I'll let you
challenged.
speak. Now
That's
let
why
me
you're
speak.
triggered.
Look, whether you exist or not, that's not an important point we were discussing here. We were
Oh, now it's
discussing.
not important. Now
No,
that
it's
I've
not.
disproved what you
It's
said,
not
it's
important.
not
And stop
important.
interrupting. Use your own preaching. Okay. Now what I'm saying is this: if history cannot be certain because it's written either by victors, it can be manipulated, it can be fabricated, and it can even be correct in certain cases. But I want you, now this is for you because I've given the reason why I believe the Quran and the Hadith, yes, the Sahih Hadith, are accurate and cannot be altered based on the stringent science of collection of the Hadith and the stringent science of the collection and preservation of the Quran. I want you to give me any example from history where there's independent attestation and it can be fabricated. Go on.
You have such a ridiculous lack of self-awareness. You claim that history is not certain because it's written by people and it's distorted by the victor.
Is that what I said?
But yes, it's
Is that what I
exactly what
said?
you said. It's exactly
I
what you
said
said.
that I'm very-
History is written by the victor
talking
and thus
about your
it
own
is
history.
distorted.
Was that the only thing I said?
Distorted. That's one of the things that you said.
And I also said
No,
it can be
let
accurate,
me speak.
remember?
Hashim, you're
You're misquoting
You're
me
not
now.
wrapping up now.
You're
Again,
misquoting.
again.
Okay, anyway.
Listen, Hashim, you're the one who's
Anyway,
getting triggered on it.
answer my question next time if you have an answer. Otherwise, we leave it there. Because I said history can be fabricated, it can be changed, it's written by victors, and it's also accurate. But he only picked up on one of those points, and that is very, very insincere of
It's
you.
not absolutely accurate. There is a possibility that parts of history are not exactly what happened.
That's what I
That
said.
That is why we need
That's
to
exactly
see
what I said.
different sources. That is why I told you the book that I quoted to you recites the Muslim scholars and the Christian scholars, and it tries to kind of put them together. What was actually relatively possible to happen.
Who
on
is that person? Do you know him?
Okay, the book that I
Not the
told
book,
you-
the author. Do you know the author?
I didn't write down the author.
No, you don't
the
have
book is
to-
called In God's Path.
Yeah, but if you
It's
don't know
about
the
Islamic-
author, if
the
you don't know the
Islamic
author,
conquest.
then
I don't.
if
I
you
don't
don't know the
remember-
author, then I can only
remember
say
the
that, look.
author. What am I obligated to know the author? I know the title.
You know,
that's
I'm not
enough.
saying what you're obligated and what you're not obligated. What I'm saying is that when you
Guys,
when,
come on.
when you read
come on, come
when
on.
you read a book, at
Nitpicking,
least you should know if the author is
nitpicking.
reliable. Okay? If the author is not reliable, he's not someone who's a professional in understanding the the preservation of the Quran or preservation of the Bible. If he's talking about that, then he's not someone who's professional.
Okay.
Okay? But if he is, but like I said,
David Yellow.
okay, what is he? What's his qualification?
I have no idea.
Okay, because you know there are people like Jay Smith. He's saying he's an expert in Islam. So people claim many things, but unless we see the credentials, there's no way to know
This is
these
the
things.
Scotsman fallacy. Every time somebody puts you in front of a fact that you don't like, you will say that's not real Islam. But that's not real Islamic history. That's whitewashing. That is.
I gave the
that is-
example about Jay Smith.
That
It's
is
not-
the Scotsman fallacy.
No, it's not a
Every time you don't
no,
like
no,
a
it's
fact,
not a-
you will say that's not a real fact.
In the case of Jay Smith, it's not a Scotsman fallacy because he doesn't have a qualification.
I'm not talking about Jay Smith.
But I
by the
was.
way.
When you made the
But you are
statement that
doubting
there's
the
Scotsman
veracity
fallacy,
of the book I
sorry?
gave you.
What I'm saying is that if I have knowledge about the author and if I know his qualification, then we can actually say yes, what he has written is something worth looking at.
Okay,
but
so
if
qualification is what matters.
can
to
I
you.
finish? Can I finish? If someone like Jay Smith comes and tells me
Remember
I'm an expert on Islam and the guy has got 0 degrees in Islam, then how can I trust him? It's got nothing to do with the Scotsman fallacy, which you incorrectly brought in. But what I
couldn't
said,
agree more.
what I said was this: with regards to history, I gave you at least four different ways how it can be manipulated, and one of those 4 was
I
other
couldn't
than,
agree more.
and one of those
No,
4.
I am being sincere.
One of those 4 was that it can also be accurate, but you only, unfortunately, picked up on one of those criteria.
I hope you won't deny what you just said.
Okay.
Because
Hashim, I think-
the part that if you don't have a degree in something, you cannot really talk about it. If you don't study something, you cannot really talk about it too much. Now, based on that, why would you believe Muhammad, who was illiterate?
Okay, first and foremost, what does
Why
illiterate
would
mean?
you? Illiterate means somebody who doesn't know how to write.
Someone who
and to
doesn't,
read.
someone who cannot write, can he memorize and speak things?
You are missing my point.
Answer. Just answer the
Can you answer the
question.
question?
No, calm down. Bro,
Just
calm
answer him.
Yeah.
Listen, you told me that the more studies, the more knowledge somebody amasses, the more trustworthy they are. I could not agree more.
Yes.
Now, if that is the main point why you qualify knowledge, why do you trust Muhammad, who had no knowledge whatsoever?
Coming from an agnostic, that's a good question.
Okay, there you go.
It's a good question. Yes? Do you believe in messengers getting revelation from God?
Possibly at least.
No, because you're not sure if God
You
exists.
are agnostic. You should
Okay,
say possibly.
good. Now, that is the difference between someone who claims to have prophecy, someone who claims to be a messenger, and getting revelation. You know the difference between someone who's a layman or someone who is even educated, yes, and someone who claims to be messenger. We don't equate them all together the same. So a messenger, we test them for the prophecies, we test them based on the miracles that God has provided them. We don't just accept just because he claims to be a prophet of God, we accept him as a prophet of God. God has given us the ability and the criteria how to identify true and false prophets. And this goes in all the Abrahamic faiths.
Okay.
We have this criteria. So does that answer your question?
Okay, so
It's
the
got
people
nothing to do
are
with
the
literacy.
ones who choose who speaks for God and who's just
Yeah.
illiterate.
So who God, it doesn't matter if
And the people are trustworthy in
No,
that
no,
choice.
it's not about
In the
illiterate.
choice whether we can trust an illiterate
I
person
believe
from the
everything
desert,
that-
or we cannot trust the illiterate person
Listen.
from the desert.
I think you did not either listen to me or you did
I
not
did
understand
listen
what I
to
said.
you. I did
So
listen to
if
you,
a
but the
prophet,
problem is that I do not trust when a person tells me he's the messenger.
Paulo, listen to this. If
That's not
something,
enough for me.
if someone does a miracle in front of you, yes, which you cannot even accept or understand scientifically. For example, in the case of Moses, he split the Red Sea. Maybe you don't believe that to be historical fact, but the
not
thing is that
quite.
if you had seen it with your own eyes, would you believe
Why
it?
don't you believe in the Iliad?
What Iliad?
In the Iliad, you don't know. You
Yeah,
gave me.
I know, but what
The
about
Odyssey
Iliad?
is another thing. The Odyssey is different. To the Iliad.
What about the Iliad?
The Iliad, the Trojan War, the Iliad, right?
What about that?
Let's talk about it. It's about Greek mythology, how the Greek gods came from the skies and helped the Greeks win the war against the Trojans. Some gods were supporting the Trojans, some gods were defending the Greeks. I did read it in very big detail. Do I believe it? No, of course not.
Okay,
It's,
so you're
it's
asking.
a story for children,
So,
basically.
so you're asking me why I don't
Yeah,
believe it?
why do you
Should I tell you
believe
why?
in the Quran and you don't believe in the Iliad?
First and foremost, we were talking about the Prophet Muhammad being unlettered, and why I don't believe. I don't know how we jumped to the Iliad. It's got no connection.
Because it's mythology, just
no,
like the
no,
Quran.
no. The Quran is not the mythology. A mythology is something like the Greek mythologies, where you have multiple gods telling you different things, and they fight each other to win. In the case of Islam, if you believe in a what do you say? In a polytheism, that itself is contrary to the belief in one God. And do you know why? Allah gives us a reason in the Quran itself that if you have two mighty beings, both of them claiming to be God, then who is the most powerful? Who is going to have the upper hand or the say as the last say? Say for example, one God said, I want sunset now. And the other God, who's equally powerful, says, no, I want sunrise now. What will happen? Clearly they'll have a clash. And that is exactly what happened in the Hindu mythology, where the gods fought each other, and the Greek mythology, where the gods fought each other. And that is the reason I don't believe in the Iliad. Does that answer your question?
So you don't believe in the Iliad while believing in the Quran, just because the Quran has one God instead of having many?
Yes. So it's
That's
not
the
only,
only
no,
reason.
that's not the only reason. That's not the, I can
why are
give
you not a Jew?
I can
And the
give you,
prophecy
I
of
can give you
Prophet
many other
Muhammad
reasons.
sallallahu
I can give you many other reasons. By the way, a Jew,
to have a lot
by
of
the way,
in common with
a
Jews.
Jew by definition is someone who believes in one God already. Yes. A Jew by definition doesn't believe in Jesus as a Messiah and Prophet
I can't hear you over the balaclava. Could you take it off, please?
Don't worry about faith.
Yeah, I think
Yeah,
it's,
I don't worry. I just can't hear you.
okay, so Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and even Jesus and even Moses, all of them, they had the test of prophethood in terms of the message, in terms of the, and they were all given this special, favor by God of doing miracles to prove to people like you, yes, and specifically like you, I'm saying the reason those who are hyper skeptical, yes, and it is something which we find in many other people, that they will be skeptical. In fact, I will be skeptical if somebody comes and tells me that I'm a prophet or someone being elected by God, because a prophet is someone who's chosen by God to do things for him. He himself will not believe it first. You know, the Prophet ﷺ, when he got the first revelation, he was reluctant that no, I don't want this, I don't want a part of this, because this is something that is very, very difficult. Even Prophet Moses, you know, all the prophets, they had a lot of tests before they were chosen to be someone who represents God. And these people, they themselves were, just like you are being skeptical, they themselves were skeptical about their own self. That maybe, no, I'm listening to things, I'm hearing things. Some of them said, no, maybe I'm listening to some spirits. They themselves were
I mean, if God
questioning
speaks
this.
to you, I think you should question your sanity before you
should.
trust what God tells you to do.
Well, I think you should question your sanity if you think we came from nowhere.
Okay, so if you think that it came from God, you shouldn't question. You should just do
I'm
what
saying
God
once
tells
you
you to do.
once you have established oneness of God and belief in God, then things fall in place very nicely about the universe and everything. But you
absolute
trust me, if
subjectivity.
you are not going to believe in God until you go to your grave, you will be hyper skeptical, and you will not have peace in your mind.
Nothing wrong with that.
There will be after you
I'm
open your
not
eyes.
looking for
in the-
peace. I'm
in
not
the-
looking for peace. I'm looking for better knowledge. And that is why you will never understand, because you don't understand the main thing about what I'm saying, which is uncertain truths will always triumph over certain lies. You telling uncertain truths
How can it
will
be?
always triumph over
How do you know
certain
the
lies.
uncertainty is the truth?
The fact that you
That
do not
itself is a
understand what I'm
paradox.
telling you
If
shows
something is
why I will
uncertain-
never be able to prove anything to
Okay,
you.
you know that is.
You deny yourself the knowledge of uncertainty.
If I was going
the
to-
possibility of improving your point of
No,
view.
I have no problem
You
improving
deny
my
that
knowledge.
yourself.
In fact, in Islam, we are not restricted upon improving our knowledge. And that is the reason the early Muslims, when they actually went in the path of finding different, exploring science and geography and many other things about astronomy, that is not something, in fact, the deen, the Quran, and the teaching of Islam was what propelled them in these sciences. On the contrary to what you just said. So a person who is uncertain, they cannot come to a certainty that this is the truth. Okay? So like Pavlov here is not certain whether he exists. I know I keep bringing
The
this,
fact that I'm
but this-
uncertain makes me have much more knowledge than your false certainty.
Well, how do
your feeling of false certainty is you thinking you understand all the world
How do you know
while
it's
you
false?
don't,
How do you know it's false?
because your feelings are flawed.
No,
Your
how do you know it's
senses are
false? I'm
flawed.
asking you the certainty I have. How do you know it's false?
Are you a man?
Are you a man?
Yes.
Are you certain?
No.
You can laugh.
You see, this
He's
is
actually right.
this is
don't
the
get it.
dominant. This is where the dominant
Are you a
comes
woman?
from. This is where the dominant comes from.
Are you a woman?
Hashim,
Are you a woman?
Hashim, stop
Are
with
you
the
a woman?
dominant. Stop with the
Are you a woman?
Stop with the
Are you a
dominant.
woman?
Are you a woman?
I'm not a woman.
How are you sure you're not?
Because
a
my
woman?
DNA says so.
Your DNA says so. How do you know your DNA?
Because I've checked
You've
my
checked.
DNA. Yes.
Have you seen your DNA? Have you felt your DNA? How do you
a
know?
ridiculous
How do you know
statement to
the
make.
thing written is your DNA?
By the way, do you know who's
You got married and have children.
in a male and female, in a male,
no,
wait,
Hashim.
in a male and female, you can tell by the DNA whether it's XY chromosomes and it's XX chromosomes. Which one do you have?
I am doubtful that he exists.
Well, I'm doubtful he's a man, which he said himself.
I am doubtful you will ever learn anything.
Well, I know, hyper skeptical.
Very nice compliment. Very nice. That was very nice. Yeah, it's good.
Which part of it? The end?
No. I
The big
was
I
I
mean, yeah.
didn't see it all, but man, it was nice.
All right, anyway, Paolo, I think we should.
I can't wait for the comments though. I can't wait for the
we
comments.
should end it
I
on
can
a-
already
on
see.
a good note.
Ooh, this agnostic. He does not know the truth.
That's
he
right.
denies
No,
the
no, no.
truth.
This agnostic who doesn't know he's a man here.
That's a bit weird, bro.
By the way, are you a man?
There you go.
Are you a man?
I'm not going to
Go
engage
get
in
him,
this.
Hashim. Go get him. Go get him.
At least your voice.
I'm not going to engage in any of that.
I say I take that seriously.
Because it's a loaded conversation. There's no possible way that he'll ever say that he actually agrees with him. No possible way. Think about it. But think about it. You've got a gun to your head. If somebody on the camera like him goes against the word of Islam, it's a very bad situation for him, right?
Do you?
Right?
Is he free?
You understand that, right?
If he is, he
It
free.
is. You know that.
Where is the gun?
So-
Have you seen it?
You know what I mean, mate. Don't play dumb. You know
It's
exactly
your
what I
language.
mean.
You're saying he has gun on his head. He cannot speak
Nah,
against Islam.
I'm not interested in
We
that.
believe in
mate.
what
Not
what's called
interested in
hereafter. We
birthdays.
never have seen.
You're diverting because you know I'm precisely right.
Yes, you are making a statement. He cannot back it up.
Oh no, I can't. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Man. I'm sorry, bro. I'm sorry.
How he can say he cannot speak against Islam because there is gun on his head? I don't know how he can speak like this.
Just heard, man.
Anyways, where is your camera today? What happened?
Hurts, man.
You're not over there, though? Is that you over there?
Anyways, have you seen Bob the Builder? We own him. We are looking for bottom. I want to make. I want to speak about Bob the Builder because he is a hate preacher and it's time to.
We're live streaming now, you know. We're live streaming now.
Is it live? No, we wanted to record it.
Call him up. Hey, Bob.
No, it has to be a video and you post it. Live stream, it will go in the middle. No one will see it.
law. Like,
We can do one after.
you might want to raise that another time you talk to them. Is that, are you free to reject this? They have guns to their head.
Ah, man, don't give them your time, man.
All views and opinions are welcome.
By their own beliefs.
All views and opinions are welcome on
See,
C.O.E.
even if you bring up a
Let me see what they're talking about over there. About to cut. Try to see, son. If I weren't filming, I would have cut long time.
Acts 21. Read Acts 21, please. Either Paul did not teach the abolition of the law, or Paul is a hypocrite if he goes to the temple to sacrifice according to the law. In both cases, you are in trouble.
Not necessarily, because...
Read 21.
Yeah, but
Let's read.
Let me just read it. Because the thing is, if you...
No.
You'll wrap up in this. 5 minutes?
Yes. Hopefully.
So, yeah, we can continue this next time you come a bit longer.
But read this chapter now.
Yeah,
Let's
because
summarize.
all I was going to say, in terms of the sacrificial system, for example...
No, but
I know, I'll read it.
This
but
will
just,
explain everything. 21,
I
chapter
know,
2.
but I'm just going to give you my understanding and I'll read it.
No, but
in
read
terms
and
of-
then give your understanding. Read first, please. 21, chapter 21, book of Acts. The question of salvation by the cross. Paul had said that the law, the curse of law has been lifted by the death of Jesus Christ on the cross. Therefore, we do not have to follow the law. And in chapter 21, he is told by one of the major disciples of Jesus Christ, James, to go and follow the law. So what's going on? Read. Are you reading first and then you...
the Nazarene vow. So that's what you're referring to, right?
Yes, okay.
So
chapter 21.
From my memory...
Can you read?
Yeah, I'm looking at it.
Read it. First read it and then explain it. Do you have chapter 21 there?
Yeah.
Okay, can I read it? Where is it? Where does it start? Chapter 21, where does it start?
Starts from 1.
And when we had parted from them and set sail, we came by a straight course to Kos, and the next day to Rhodes, and from there to Patara. And having found a ship crossing to Phoenicia, we went abroad and set sail. When we had come in sight of Cyprus, leaving it on the left, we sailed to Syria and landed at Tyre. For there the ship was to unload its cargo, and having sought out the disciples, we stayed there for 7 days, and through the Spirit they were telling Paul not to go on to Jerusalem. When our days they were ended, we departed and went on our journey, and they all with wives and children accompanied us until we were outside the city, and kneeling down on the beach we prayed and said farewell to one another. Then we went on board the ship and they returned home. When we had finished the voyage from Tyre, we arrived at... Okay, all of this is about his journey, yeah? I want to get to the point, yeah.
It's broken down.
Yeah.
Let's talk about this now.
Okay, Paul visits James, chapters 21, book of Acts, verse 17 onwards. When we had come to Jerusalem, the brothers received us gladly. On the following day, Paul went in with us to James, and all the elders were present. All the elders were present. Who are these elders? The disciples of Jesus Christ. The disciples of Jesus Christ. After greeting them, he related one by one the things that God had done among the Gentiles through his ministry. Okay? And when they heard it, they glorified God, and they said to him, "You see, brother, how many thousands there are among the Jews of those who have believed." Are you reading? Who have believed. They're all zealous for the law. They are all zealous for the law. Okay? And they have been told about you that you teach all the Jews who are among the Gentiles to forsake Moses, which Paul did. Forsake Moses how? Leaving the law. Leaving the law. Telling them not to circumcise their children or walk according to our customs, which is an abolition of the law, which is exactly what Paul taught, that Jesus has died on the cross. Law is no longer necessary, it is a curse. What then is to be done? They will certainly hear that you have come. Do therefore what we tell you. We have 4 men who are under a vow. Take these men and purify yourself along with them and pay their expenses, so that they may shave their heads, Thus all will know that there is nothing in what they have been told about you. That means that the fact that you have been telling people to abolish the law and not follow it anymore because of the sacrifice of Jesus is a lie. James is telling Paul, do all these things so that the people can see it's a lie. Okay? Now, there are a number of questions here. Is Paul actually lying? Or what, did Paul not tell them, no, I'm actually teaching that? If Paul did tell them that, why is James telling him to go and pretend as a hypocrite? Okay. But that you yourself also live in observance of the law. James is telling Paul, go and do all these things so that people can see that you are actually an observant Jew who observes the law. But as for the Gentiles who have believed, we have sent a letter with our judgment that they should abstain from what has been sacrificed to idols, and from blood, and from what has been strangled, and from sexual immorality, which is all the law. Okay? Then Paul took the men, and the next day he purified himself along with them and went into the temple, giving notice when the days of purification would be fulfilled and the offering presented for each one of them, which means he followed the law. He has come back having preached to the Gentiles. He has already preached not following the law because Jesus has died on the cross. He was accused in Jerusalem of abolishing the law of Moses. James tell him, go and practice the law in front of people so that people know that you haven't actually taught that it's a lie against you, and Paul complies. Now either Paul did not teach the abolition of the law or Paul is a lying hypocrite. In both cases you are in big trouble. It's a dilemma for you. Now come out of it.
Well, obviously Paul taught that
the law is abolished.
Yeah.
So why did he go in the temple and do the law?
Well, from my knowledge, because he's showing that. No.
Either he didn't teach it, or he's a hypocrite. Which one is it?
No, because I'm just trying to think of the verse. That
Think.
Because he
don't
because
just say anything.
Yeah, because
if you need research, you need to go away and do research and come back.
Because there's, in terms of Paul, from what I remember, because I've read around this.
No, you need to think about this, brother.
Yeah.
Because this is a serious matter. A lot of Christians don't think about it. Either Paul is a hypocrite, who believes in one thing and practices another, or he did not preach what he was accused of, or he's even lying to the disciples.
Yeah, because
obviously he said to James, no, that's not true.
Yeah.
That's why James is telling him, go and do such and such, so that people know that this is a lie. So either Paul has lied to the disciples and did what they told him to do, or he never said it. He never taught people to abolish the law. You are in big, seriously, this is a dilemma you cannot come out of. If you can, I'm here every Sunday and every now and then. Please do let me know so that I can also start changing my arguments against Christians.
Yeah, well, we'll go into it more.
So you need more time? You need more time?
Well, because the thing is, even with this, from what I remember, because
forget about what you remember. If you don't know, don't misrepresent your faith.
Yeah, because in terms of the Nazarene vow, it was something to do. Paul is showing that there's nothing wrong with.
When you finish,
because Paul's message was there's nothing necessarily wrong with observing the law, but we're not bound by the law.
No.
Yes.
Paul is saying.
Because
Paul is saying
because
law is a curse.
Yeah.
That has been lifted by the sacrifice of
we're not bound by the law. But as a Jew, you are still able to observe the law. But you're not bound by the law.
To practice the law in front of Jews deliberately so that they get the wrong idea about him. Is that hypocrisy, or is that being a true follower of Jesus Christ?
Well, obviously Paul expands on things in other, goes on. I'll have to get the verse, and obviously if we have another discussion
so we will suspend this judgment.
Yeah, I'll bring the exact verses, because Paul talks I won't be able to bring them up, all the different verses where he explains how the law is being applied. and that's something I can bring with references the next
Well,
time.
I need answers to two options. Either Paul is a liar,
Yes.
or he never taught the abolition of the law. You have only two options. There's no third option.
Well,
Because this
No.
this chapter,
Yes.
this chapter, Book of Acts, chapter 21,
Yeah.
verse 17 onwards until the end, has put you in big trouble.
not really.
Well, we'll see.
Yeah.
When you come back, we'll see.
Okay. Well, when are you next down anyway?
Possibly next Sunday.
Next
Okay.
Sunday?
Yeah, possibly next Sunday.
Okay.
Thank you very
All
much.
right.
Nice talking to you.
Okay, cool, cool.
no
We'll do
worries.
this again next
Okay.
Sunday.
Thank you very much. Yeah, come back
Yes.
when you have read around.
Yeah.
Comment.
I'll bring the verses. and
Okay.
stuff.
Thank you so much. Thank you very much, everyone.
All right. Cool. Cool.
Sheikh Mohammed, yalla, let's go. Now he's busy. They have left. Is it them?
You will see what I'm going over there. And if Raj is still over there. Is Raj still over here whiling you? As you be there.
Like whenever people are kind of like demonising and saying stuff about white people in general, it's a bit more problematic to me because you can't blame the whole race of white people.
Yeah, of course.
Who's doing that? Who's doing that though?
Raj, I have to say,
No, but I want to hear this guy though. I really
You're not white though.
Raj, I want to hear this guy.
You're not. You're new race of people.
Hold on. I want to hear this guy. Go on.
You're more pinker than a normal white man though. I'm not going to say that. You know, he's
Raj,
more
can you
pinker
please,
than a
please,
normal
let
white.
this guy speak. Please, Raj. Go on.
I just find it, you just got to separate. You've got to separate race from religion always. I know you can talk about racism. It's an interesting conversation. But
No melanin.
I'd rather talk about ideas. It's great.
I think it's in the minus 10.
Islam is a bad idea.
But you not agree that Islam and Muslims have contributed to a lot to, i.e. with mathematics, with science. We have had a lot of input in the way that the world runs today.
I hear about
From
this.
Muslim scientists who met Muslim astronomers.
I hear about Islamic code name. I don't
Can I
know.
just say,
Go on.
okay, so look, you said that about Islam, right? You've had bad experiences with some Muslim people that they tried
loads
to
of Muslims,
forcefully.
yeah.
Now, I want to tell you one thing that happened to me.
It's like a ghetto. I mean, I see it as like a ghetto.
Okay, check this out. Listen to this, yeah. I've been robbed by a Moroccan man. I've been pickpocketed by an Algerian man. I got scammed by a Nigerian Muslim man. I got robbed by a Bangladeshi Muslim.
No Sikhs though.
All Muslims, yeah. I got criminals. I got con, yeah. I got con, yeah. But I got robbed. My laptop got robbed by a Pakistani Muslim man. My rent money got robbed. Okay.
No Sikhs still.
My rent money got robbed by a Bangladeshi Muslim man. Yeah.
Okay, but you're making us bad,
I was the Sikh neighbours that helped him. I was the Sikh neighbours that helped
A
him.
Nigerian Muslim man scammed me. Algerian Muslim man pickpocketed me. Moroccan Muslim man robbed me and slapped me. So now I'll tell you
Look at
something.
the size of you. How did you get slapped?
I don't know.
I don't know this to be honest.
Basically, what happened is
And why you let
the
all of
people
them
that
steal
did it,
your
It
right?
better be around that
People,
big.
they saw an
If
opportunity,
he's some
so they
little
took
titchy
it.
little guy,
Regardless of my religion,
like that
regardless of
little
their
Turk, that
religion,
little
although they
Indian,
use
man,
the word
mad.
Muslim brother, put your trust in me, put your trust in me, put your trust in me. Okay, we're gonna get rich together, and then they grab the money, turn and run away. So what's happened is. It's not the religion that it's not the religion that teaches
Come on, you Muslims.
Islam doesn't never make.
All you do is fight with each
Can I say something? There's a difference between Muslims and Islam.
I'm being nice today.
Hold on, Raj.
There's sort of internal conflict in Islam.
I'm being nice today.
There's a difference between Islam and Muslims, right?
I'm scared for
Islam
him.
doesn't allow you to steal.
When I first met him, I
Islam
tried to
doesn't allow
kind
you
of
to keep. That's what
warn
I'm
him
telling
off.
you, mate. If you read the Quran,
When I
the
first met
Quran
him, I
clearly
warned him
states
to
what we
do.
should
I
and
know,
what we
you looked
shouldn't
into
do.
it, Doc.
Now, as people, I believe
Because
it's
you're so
true.
pink.
I believe
I assumed you're going to be ginger.
believe
Apartheid
so.
actually exists. There is
That's
no
my
country.
racism.
It's
going back.
Well, that's your opinion,
You're
mate.
fine.
You're so
There's
white,
not
you're
1.8 billion
luminous.
people that believe
You
in the
got
same.
red cheeks.
But listen,
Not
that's
translucent,
beside the point.
translucent
If you
in the
believe-
sun.
It's a big deal because if it's
What are you?
I can see your
atheist,
veins.
right? Yeah.
When the sun's out, I can see your veins.
So I don't agree with that belief, but it's not enough for me to say you're
That's how white you
uneducated.
are.
You shouldn't have
As long
those
as they're
beliefs.
green.
You understand? Because people should, if you're talking about liberation, people should be free to have their own thoughts. Unless their ideology is not forced upon you, unless their ideology doesn't oppress you, we're living in the 21st century, mate, like you don't want to say, right? We keep on advancing. But have you been oppressed by a Muslim, though?
Loads of times. That's what they fucking do.
Can I say something?
I say something. You're born and bred in this country. You're English, right? So how does it feel that I've been in the British Army and I'm Muslim?
Huh?
I've been in the British Army and I'm Muslim.
Trying to get him on still.
That's it.
It sounds like you want to get your own will, don't you?
No.
But it doesn't matter. A lot of people are going against their own will.
Blood on the tongue.
I don't have the blood on the tongue. Well done, you thought.
What do you think about the news of the innocent Muslims that were killed in New Zealand?
You got a Big Mac on your tongue.
Stop
eating.
About the manifesto.
Blood on your tongue.
I didn't hear or
Look
see
how
that.
thin I've got now, man.
Ah, shut up, bro.
That's like just get a new one. Get a new joke. Get a new
That's what
joke.
he's trying to say. It was more about
fucking jokes, eh?
sort of brown people.
Hey, the British guy.
Oh my God, gay video. PC Bonds here. PC Bonds here. PC Bonds. He's here. He's here.
Went for the light on him.
He's looking for it. Hey that Ali. Hey that Ali. PC Bonds. He needs to be getting his warning. He's here.
The thing about the Malis, we got about 5 different names. You don't have no government names.
So if Muslims are oppressive, you don't agree that there are other Islam's not the only.
You know what? You hate that Ali.
You got so happy.
Can't leave my bag there with that thug walking around. He didn't even sleeve my flute. You saw he stole my flute. He put it up.
Raj, can you please, every time you talk too much, just love the sounds of your own voice, man.
I apologize.
You love the sound of your own voice.
Use the tools.
I'm trying to hear this guy.
You got blood everywhere, man. You got blood everywhere.
You got blood in your butthole.
Blood
I
everywhere.
know it, man, please, man. We're having a serious
You got blood in your
conversation.
butthole.
Did you watch that Major Six?
Can I just?
Disgrace, man. That's my Muslim. We as a Muslims, we believe we're ummah.
Hey, wash your
We
fucking
believe we're
phone, bro.
brothers and
Dirt,
sisters. Yeah, that's what
Look
my
at his
Muslims
phone
is. Whether
screen,
you
bro.
agree with it
Lick
or
it.
not,
Dirt,
right,
man.
that's
Dirt
why
all over.
people-
Lick it off.
Even if it wasn't Muslims, I don't like oppression, mate. I don't like it at all. Yeah, so the fact that innocent people were killed and these are children and families in a mosque, that makes me sick. If it was Jews, look, even when
And the blood is on your hands.
Oh, no, hold on, brother.
Whoa,
Blood is on your tongue.
Your blood is in your
You get me?
butthole. Stop getting
Fucking
rimmed.
man.
No, brother.
Dirty cunt.
Brother, Akhi, we have to
Dirty rat.
be respectful, Akhi. We can't retaliate like that, Akhi.
Don't
We
worry
have
The
to-
about
police
Don't
are
worry
after him
about
as well.
Nah,
Snitch,
listen,
snitch,
brother, we have to,
snitch.
as
Don't worry
Muslims, we
about
cannot
that.
say that, yeah? But what I'm saying to you, even when they killed up
Listen,
the people
brother,
in
good. I'm
America,
Hey, what do you mean, man?
in America,
Big
when
man.
they shot the black people in
And in the
church,
Sikh temple as
that
well.
pissed me off as
Yeah,
well.
the Sikh
That's
temple.
what I'm saying.
This was about race, though. The Christchurch attack was about race.
That man is claiming
No, it was about
100,000
Muslims,
Indians
bro. It was
been
about a
killed
Muslim
in one
attack,
day.
bro.
I think
It's a Muslim attack.
this is
Well,
what
let me just say about race, right? There's Muslims that are different colour races.
That's right.
No, I know. I'm just saying.
That's right.
In his manifesto, there was. I'm honestly not aware there was any anti-Muslim rhetoric.
He says he was
There
racist,
was, he
mate.
said-
He
I
says
think
he
he
was
was-
racist.
No, I
Yeah,
think
it's
he was.
not a race, is it?
No, I think he was saying
It's not
that.
a race.
Yeah, but obviously...
It's not
Don't worry
a
about
race.
that now.
but-
I'm already
but-
decided tonight.
Muslims are not a race. You can't convert to a race.
No,
So there was nothing in his manifesto that was anti-Muslim. It was anti-foreign invaders, anti-immigrants, anti-brown people. It was all about white supremacy.
Yeah, I mean,
Protecting
the
his own
core
people.
element
Why
was.
did he choose Muslims, though?
Because they're easy targets all in the mosque. I don't know what I mean, and they're at the forefront.
Rod, get married, man.
I'm just saying. In the
That's it.
in
You're
the
proposing.
Because
manifesto,
what
there's
about the
nothing.
other one, the one that happened
You're
in
proposing,
Norway,
you
in
little
Europe, by what's his
weirdo.
name? You know the other guy?
Just
married, man,
Alan
that's
Shepard,
right. Did
yeah.
this guy-
Go in
Are you
prison
cutting
and
your
suck up
pubic
50
hair?
jihadis.
Are you cutting your pubic hair?
Yeah, I'll cut my
Soon
pubic hair.
enough, you're gonna go Channel Obey.
I'll give you
Soon
it
enough,
for
you're gonna go
breakfast.
Channel Obey.
I'll give it for your breakfast. Put on your pillow.
That's it, boy.
Yeah, he killed me his own as
I
well.
bet you get ripped
Cushion
on
in
Tommy
your
Robinson's
pillow.
rally.
White Norwegian students.
All the DFLA lot rips him, you know.
I
He
was
gets
really
ripped,
moving
man.
forward
Ripped.
because I do find it a little bit concerning when you say...
Man lives for Sunday, man.
He's
Look at
He's the
that.
king of the 10 inches. He's got no gag reflex.
Iron, man.
British person like you.
Get a gag reflex, man. You're freaking Adam Apples.
His clothes are like that.
You got no Adam's record, Adam's apples anymore. They got something
Loose clothes now. Loose clothes for loose fatty. You get me? Loose clothes for loose fatty. Hand in the heat.
Stop ruining a good
And you weren't
conversation.
Muslim, she was with you.
Hold on a minute.
Denounce Tommy Robinson, you mug. Denounce Tommy Robinson.
He's a thief. He's a thief.
You know what? I think it's upset. I think your relationship upset you. That's why you don't like Muslims.
Easy, too easy.
You don't like Muslims because the Pakistani girl broke his heart. That's why, man.
More than one Muslim, mate. Not just
Yeah, so if you had your heart broken by a Muslim,
Where's the flute man as well? And she got children.
Flutes up his mouth, but they're not generating.
I've spoken to him already. Why to hide it? Hide it. I'm sorry. He's got a fetish for flutes.
He wanted to convert her to atheism.
I've got a flute that's 14 inches now. Let's see if he can take it down.
Her friends were balling, all brainwashed down. Radicalised at the Islamic Society University. Said, I need to convert to Islam. I'm having to my life.
That was thinking. This guy is disgusting, brother. You know,
Listen, have some respect to
around
the
Darby Burrow. He exposed his
You know today, yeah, we're trying to have a conversation, yeah, about the terrorist attacks in New Zealand. And what you're doing is walking around like the turd that you are.
Blood on your tongue. You got blood on your tongue.
You little prick.
The shit that you talk about, this is what caused the bloodshed of the Muslims.
You're a fool.
You waste, man. You filthy rat. Denounce Tommy Robinson.
Listen here, yeah.
Tommy Robinson is your dad that who teaches the bloodshed. You get me?
I understand. But here's Haida Ali.
He will never denounce
Big up the
Tommy Robinson.
popo. Big up the popo.
You fucking rat. No, I've got cover. C.O.E. camera.
So even if you want to
Fucking
go out
rat.
and drink or whatever. What are you going to do about it? What are you going to do about it?
I'm a law-abiding citizen, you fucking cunt.
What are you going to do about it, pussy?
I'm a law-abiding citizen, you waste man.
Yeah, you walk around like
I'm not a Sikh terrorist like you.
You're some street thug.
You're a terrorist.
You are road.
You terrorist
Not
teacher.
Speaker's Corner.
I'm
You're
road.
road,
I'm
not
not
Speaker's
speaking. I'm
Corner.
just telling you for a joke, man.
I'm Speaker's Corner, not road.
Man, they're coming to Speaker's Corner talking about I'm road.
He's ruining the conversation. We're having a sensible conversation.
Yeah, big man, I'm not here for whistles, innit?
Come, guys, please. I'm trying to talk. I'm trying to talk. Please. In the background, sucking cock.
you as well.
I've de-radicalised you already, innit? Yeah, you're already de-radicalised. Get away from him.
Oh, that's that guy.
Get away from him.
Did he try molesting you? With your ginger? Sorry.
Right, let this guy, this one was speaking.
What are you talking about, man? Don't listen to him, man. He's a matchy boy Muslim. He's a matchy boy Muslim. You get me?
Yeah, I'm not sure.
I'm more marginalised than you Muslims, trust me.
So you're being oppressed by your own kind.
White people hate gingers, trust me.
Oh, the women are
That's what you convert.
Dangerous.
What's your name again? Phil, Maz.
Justice for gingers!
Look at the way he's standing next to the ginger.
What is the difference between
It's like his master.
the relationship they're using, the relationship that my sister's in, is that
the popos are,
the husband, my sister's husband, he converted for the sake of just so he can be right? We let him do his own thing, you know? For the sake of like, not my family, but for the sake of like the people that are in the wedding, yeah, just to keep their mouth shut, he just decided that
No, but listen, just do, after that, it's got to be principled, man. Was your missus, I didn't believe it.
Was your ex-missus, was she really strong in it? You have to do this, you have to do that, you have to convert, you have to become like this, pray 5 times a day, 6 times a day first.
But obviously she wasn't really that much of, like, she wasn't really serious Muslim if she got into the relationship with a non-Muslim. I'm not judging the girl, but obviously for me as a Muslim, but obviously based on Islamic principles, no Muslim girl should enter a relationship or want to be with somebody that's not Muslim.
Do you say with kuffar? No. In the kitab, Muslims are allowed to marry Christians and Jews.
Men are, not the women. Not the women. No, it's just the men, brother. Yeah. The man can marry a Christian or a Jewish woman.
But a woman
can't. She's still a people of the book, unless hopefully inshallah she converts. But to be honest, a woman cannot enter a relationship with a non-Muslim. A Muslim woman can't enter a non-Muslim man. Not because you're filthy. Kufar means non-believer, bro.
Big up the kuffars who run things.
Just remember that meaning, guys. That means non-Muslim. That's what it means.
I know, but we run things.
That's all it means. Non-Muslim. Listen, do you know how similar Islam is to Judaism?
Yeah, it's very similar. So I took her to my house. She introduced me to my family. My family loved her. Took her on holiday. She loved it.
It's almost 90%, 95% the same.
Message. We're chances.
So she'd come around my house, she'd be intimate, and then she'd pray in the corner and forgive me.
Story, oh no.
Because I almost repent of sins because you've been with me.
Can I ask you a question?
I go, darling, you don't have to do that. It's not fucking true.
Can I ask you a question? Look, one of the things we was discussing before. One of the things we was discussing before. Hold on.
Yeah, I mean, this is a bit.
Let's not get into personal things. Hold on.
When you live here, it's impossible to live in the West.
She been getting done in the head. I mean,
she might have had gin inside.
Somebody like somebody telling.
Let's do next system. Somebody was pressuring her.
So what it was.
Was she not here? Like 3 weeks ago when the guy was
screaming? I wish I knew you.
That was the gym, fam.
You know why? I would have said to you, listen, get her away from these people. Get her away from them. And if you don't get away from them, you have to get her.
Ultimately, we sin. As Muslims, we sin. Like me, for instance, right? I used to drink alcohol. I haven't drunk alcohol for months, right? Because and people judge me, even Muslims. Oh my God, you used to drink alcohol. Allah knows that we're gonna sin, but Allah is the most forgiving. So if we do commit sin, Allah will forgive us. Do you understand? That's the principle that we live by. Even if you don't believe it, you think it's fairy tales.
It doesn't exist.
I believe in it, and that gives me hope. That gives me faith.
But also, if you stop, like I've stopped for 6 years, people say, "Oh, Rod, you used to drink." Yeah, I used to drink. I'm more stronger than you because I stopped it.
That's right.
So somebody that has done something and then stops it is much more stronger in terms of their
like
willpower.
you see the videos right here online of me holding a beer can, which is a beer 2 years ago. That was 2 years ago, bro, yeah? And I'm still being judged for what I done 2 years ago, which I find is very disgusting because as Muslims, we have no right to judge nobody. We have no right to slander nobody at the end of the day because me drinking alcohol, if anything, it only affects me because I'm putting that substance within my body. You understand what I'm saying to you? So that's why people are so bothered about what I used to drink, what I put in my stomach. Hold on, when they go out and slandering. What is more worse, my brother? Someone drinking alcohol and stopping or somebody slandering somebody about what they used to do?
Can we get
somebody slandering
we have a white person there. Let's talk about this white issue.
So many Muslims out there that drink alcohol. I have to be honest.
Yeah, we're gonna wrap up. But one of the things I want to kind of just say: do you truly believe here that people that are not of the same ethnicity of you are trying to take over the West or the UK?
It's obvious. It's obvious. There's only one white man here.
Not Muslims.
There's only two.
But I'm talking about immigrants.
I'm a white. I think there's a chip on the shoulder. The whole time I'm stood over there thinking, there's a real victim mentality.
I'm not a victim. Only a victim of crime from Gay Dunya. You took my flute.
And you're grassing.
Yeah, big up the Pope. The police are looking for him. He's the 10th most wanted man in the world for taking the flute. 10 guys after him.
That's the shit that he ripped him from. That's the flute that he took up his ass and fucking gave back, you know. This guy's been bleeding up his ass, bro. He's wears black so you can't see his blood. He's leaking blood from his ass.
He's got no gag reflex.
Dirty rat.
He's got no Adam's apple left.
How does he know all this gag reflex?
That's how many fucking cops he's taken down.
That's what he does, you know.
I just have a problem.
Yes, raped by Tommy Robinson and his old DFLA lot, man. You know, the Muslim Reagans, the dumb, weak, fuck-tard motherfuckers, they rape him up, you get me?
Is it Islamic ray guns?
Yeah, the Islamic ray guns that don't, you know, the fucktards and that. These are the ones that rape him, you know. And these are the ones that he cleans with his tongue. He begs them, you get me?
But can I ask you a question?
It's not about race.
Do your conclusion.
What is your solution?
What the fuck are you talking anyway? You ain't got no input on it. You get me?
What's your solution?
Go suit your master Tommy Robinson up.
What do you think the solution is? Yeah, I know deporting Gay Dunya is definitely #1 on my list. But we'll put him in a catapult.
Your world is gay. Gay Dunya is huge.
But basically, with yourself, yeah. Hold on, with yourself, yeah. Hold on. With yourself, yeah. What do you think the solution is? Because I've said my piece before.
He brought his flute out,
what do you
shove
think
it up
the
his
solution
ass.
is about people kind of like
It might work in
living
the
under
already.
one country together and united
I think there could be sort of lots of cultural integration, racial integration.
So you're not racist?
I mean, ultimately, mate,
I know,
right,
I love
think
you,
we
though.
should all live in unity between each other, and I think we should all love each other, and we should just stop fighting, basically. Like, that's just my solution.
What about this coloured person?
I'll tell you what's the worst.
What about this?
That's right,
Our
that's
hero
right.
was hung by the British on the 14th of March, 3-4 days ago.
That's right, tell him.
Hung by the British. What you got to say about that? That was very racist. Autumn Singh, what you got to say about that?
Big up Autumn Singh, gonna do his drawings.
And all the
That's
DFLA fascists, they all see him as a
I'm
terrorist.
Cockney absent. I'm Cockney in it.
Alright,
Look at it with contempt.
Alright, yeah, I think
Ultimately, we're going to wrap this up, right? Thank you, Raj, for being here.
Yeah, right, mate.
Thank
Yeah.
you, my
Let's
brother
go
here.
down to the
Thanks
pub,
for
mate.
being
Come on,
here.
mate. Come on, man. Let's
Apple
go.
and pears, all of that, man.
Come on,
Don't know what. Big up all my Muslims and that. You get me?
Let's bust a nut.
What
Yeah,
I'm
come on,
saying,
let's bust a nut.
yeah?
Let's go. Come on, man. Let's go. Let's go down to the pub. Alright, so basically,
Nah, mate, I'm not going to detonate.
So basically, what we're going to do here is we don't want to be racist.
1 minute and 40 seconds.
Slang here, so we're going to leave it. But basically, I think we've come to a good conclusion. C.O.E. I took the C.O.E. takeover today. I've had like maybe 4 hours worth of videos. So be prepared for some Rajaphobia.
What's the take-home
in that attack?
Racism is wrong, but very fun. And Islam is still a threat.
Look, I want to say something. Stop. Where's the camera? Okay, listen. Get Grass, come here for a second, please. What are you going to do? No, just come here. Listen, I want to send a message. Sakib Hussain, listen, I want you to come down here. Have a conversation with Raj, yeah? Okay, speak to the man. Yeah, speak to us, okay? Don't have this idea in your mind, okay? That bad, evil. Just come down, speak to
Masood is the person that is like the solution, not the threat. So big up to Masood.
If you have anything on your mind, Sakib, I'm speaking to you. If you have anything on your mind, okay, any queries that you want to speak to Raj about, talk to him. Okay? You may have this bad thought in your mind that, you know, the same what I did. I came down, yeah? Okay, I came down. Hey, stop 1 second, man, please. 1 minute. I'm on the camera, 1 second, man. Please. Okay, I came down here with a hostile attitude towards Raj. Okay, but then speaking to him, my views changed. The same happened with Big Odds as well.
He's a lovable character.
We spoke to him, okay, my views changed, okay. Raj, I understand that he has a bit of an issue, okay, with grooming. He has a bit of an issue with the grooming thing. What? We'll do it next week. Okay. We'll do it next week. Wait, stop. Wait, stop. Are you threatening me?
Hit the light.
Listen, Sakib, just come down here, speak to the man, alright? Please, okay? Just speak to the boy.
Oh, he's talking about me because me and him,
That's
Big
right,
Odds,
man, that's
remember
right,
Big
man.
Odds there? The beginning was hostile, he was the same thing. When he come over to me, he was hostile.
We're done.
He wanted to get me.
Listen, what are you saying, man?
But now we're cool.
Big up all Muslims.
Yeah, right, man. Anyway, good.
Once I can see.
Let's get this camera on so we can record some threats and whatever I need to. Because what it is,
Content over everything.
Abu Talha needs to eat.
Where's TNT?
When Abu Talha eats, maybe he might stop. He's malnutrition. His brain cells are
I was forced to be in the army, alright?
Your brother, you've been planting this.